Saturn's rings are disappearing. Yes, according to a NASA report, by March 2025, we will see something like this, which NASA has confirmed by saying that Saturn's rings are going to be completely invisible for us Earthlings, which basically means those rings which have been recognizing Saturn for millions of years, who used it like a cheat code and could recognize Saturn properly even as a nursery child out of all the other planets, those rings are now going to disappear. But how? Is there something happening there that shouldn't be happening? Well, NASA thinks that yes, there is a possibility, because coincidentally, or at the root of this problem, Saturn's two moons, Enceladus and Titan, can be there, and NASA believes that life can exist on them. So is there any intelligent life responsible for this bad situation of Saturn? Well, this thought is not going to be covered by NASA. We will keep this thought in a parking lot for some time. And let's take a look at something very interesting. Let's take a look at these three images taken by NASA. They were taken in different years. You can see that in the first image, some faint holes are visible on Saturn's rings. And then after about 25 years, in this 2004 image, those holes are somehow disappearing. And then suddenly, after the next 5 years, in 2009, those holes appear again, meaning something fishy is happening with Saturn's rings. Actually, NASA's Goddard Space Flight Center scientist, Dr. James O'Donoghue, recently revealed this in 2018 that, yes, NASA's teams knew from the beginning that Saturn's rings were disappearing. But since Voyager 1 and 2 missions had continuously studied for 3 decades, the estimated deadline for that event was announced after about 300 million years. That's why NASA never made any progress on this. But after this, due to growing fascination, NASA planned a new dedicated mission to study Jupiter and Saturn separately called Cassini, and liftoff of the Cassini spacecraft on a billion-mile trek to Saturn. And it was this mission that raised a major alarm about Saturn's rings. Data from the Cassini mission said that the holes in Saturn's rings are caused by a unique destructive phenomenon that will not disappear in the next 300 million years, but 3 times faster. In the next 100 million years will swallow all the rings of Saturn. So then, why is NASA saying that by 2025, Saturn's rings are going to disappear? Well, you'll understand the whole story in a while. But before that, in 2004, when Cassini was launched, and after some time, when it reached Saturn, NASA saw that Saturn's rings were made of majorly water and ice. You might already know this. But then, they discovered that the ring made of that icy water was rapidly pouring down on Saturn in the form of rain. According to NASA, this rain is so fast that in every small area of Saturn in just half an hour, an Olympic-sized swimming pool is literally filling up. But unlike Earth, there is no water cycle system here. It is not happening here that there is an ocean on Saturn, which is pouring down on it again like water cycle on Earth. Here, its rings are melting, and it is being poured down and flooded. And unfortunately, there is no going back after that. But interestingly, you know what? Saturn itself is the hand behind the melting of this ice. And the reason behind this is also very interesting. Saturn's hand is behind the melting of Saturn's rings. Let's assume that he wants to get rid of this random gift. Look, the thing is, the UV light coming from the sun, when it falls on the ice cubes in the rings of Saturn, then the H2O, or water molecules in the rings of Saturn, use that energy to convert themselves into hydronium ions by applying an extra hydrogen ion. Now, normally, these small hydronium ions could be dispersed anywhere in outer space. But, as you might know, electric charge and magnetism are 2 spectrums of the same electromagnetic wave. So, that's why these charged hydronium ions start attracting towards Saturn's massive magnetic field. And with that, by throwing H+ ions out, they start pouring water on Saturn. And now, what's more, a detailed study says that whatever is happening on Saturn is a never-ending phenomenon. And that's why, because of this, with every passing second, all parts of the rings of Saturn are disappearing one by one. So, now the question is about those holes, which are disappearing mysteriously, and then coming back, and disappearing again. How? Well, as soon as NASA's latest Saturn explorer, Cassini, was studying Saturn's rings, then NASA scientists noticed an important pattern in the holes on those rings. They saw that these weird patterns are more visible when the duration of both day and night on Saturn is exactly the same. That is, during its equinox, when its equator and its rings are exactly aligned with the Sun. Now, for context, in the case of Earth, this happens only twice a year, on 21st March and on 23rd September. But because of Saturn's huge orbit, this equinox happens once every 15 Earth years. And instead of a day, it goes on for months. Now, from all this, a question came to your mind. If during the equinox Saturn's equator and its rings align with the Sun, and therefore direct sunlight is applied only on its outer ring, then why are holes being made in the rings inside Saturn by melting the ice? Definitely, there is something else happening in Saturn's rings, which we may not be able to decode yet. But, well, some independent physicists believe that this is happening because during the equinox, the ions floating in Saturn's ring, instead of mixing in the flat ring, they start forming spikes that form standing structures by collecting themselves, leaving holes underneath them. Actually, according to these physicists, when the heat of the Sun doesn't reach the inner rings of Saturn, then those rings start getting cold, and hence the magnetic properties of some things present in those rings increase. Now, for those who maybe don't know, this is not a unique phenomenon at all. This normally happens with every magnetic thing, because in anything, atoms normally vibrate in different directions. And because of this, the magnetic field of those atoms also aligns in the opposite direction and cancel each other out. But when the heat of that thing starts decreasing, then their atoms stop vibrating gradually, and therefore net magnetism increases. Meaning, all in all, if those physicists are right, then perhaps the things present in those holes have not completely fallen on Saturn. Rather, they are aligned with Saturn's strong magnetic field, and some parts of Saturn's ring are floating up and down in the form of spikes. But if this is the case, then why is NASA saying that these rings will completely disappear in 2025? Till now, as you saw, no calculation is proving that these rings will be destroyed so quickly. And worse, some say 300 million years, some say 100 million years. Some even say that the things present in the rings are exactly the same. They are just hidden above and below the rings. So, what is the truth here and what is the lie? Well, with this confusion, we took a step back and once again approached this whole news of 2025 with a fresh mind. And we came to know that Saturn's rings will disappear in 2025, but only for the Earthlings. Actually, when we saw that NASA specifically is saying March 2025, then naturally we thought, let's do one thing. In that particular month, in which phase will Saturn and how will it look from the Earth? Let's find out. And as soon as we saw this, everything was crystal clear. Actually, in March 2025, Saturn's equator with the Sun and the Earth is going to be completely perpendicularly aligned. This means that from the Earth, Saturn's rings will look something like this, as if we are looking at a paper from its side. And now just consider, if you look at a paper from its side, and that too from a distance, then what will you see? Absolutely nothing. That paper will sort of, for you, optically disappear. And the same is happening with Saturn's rings, because Saturn is so far from us that before a person reaches there, the other person will touch the moon 18 times and return. And due to this same phenomenon, NASA said that March 2025 will stop seeing Saturn's rings from the Earth for some time. But still, let's not forget, in 100 million years, these rings will be completely destroyed, and they will really disappear. Now, let's come to the last and most favorite question of many viewers. I had said in the beginning that there is a possibility of alien life in 2 moons of Saturn. Why is that? And is intelligent alien life possible there? So look, recently NASA scientists have been trying to find some on the 2 moons of Saturn, Enceladus, and Titan, which can create similar to cell membranes and start a unique life there. Look, 3 to 4 billion years ago, the same thing happened on the Earth. In those days, first of all, some molecules called coacervate were formed. And then those molecules created initial life structures like cell membranes, after which complex, diverse life was born. Look, A cell can't be made without because cell membranes are the walls of cells which keep the elements inside intact so that there can be a reaction inside and a stable environment to form life. Now, in the case of the moons of Saturn, scientists have found some compounds called acrylonitrile made of carbon. And NASA says that these compounds can coservate and form cell membranes together. Besides, unlike coservates, which needed water for this process as a solvent, acrylonitrile needs methane and ethane as a solvent, and these literally flow on the moons of Saturn. So, all in all, Saturn is a very favorable system to sustain acrylonitrile-based cell system.